الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ به تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن سيدنا محمدًا عبده ورسوله وصفيه من خلقه وخليله بلغ الرسالة وأدى الأمانة ونصح للأمة فكشف الله تعالى به الغمة وجاهد في الله حق جهاده حتى أتاه اليقين من ربه اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد الرحمة المهداة وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى أصحابه وعلى من تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. All praises belonging to Allah Azza wa Jal. And may the peace and blessings be upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and upon his family and companions and all those who follow in his guidance until the day of judgment. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal on this blessed day of Friday to enable us to do acts of goodness in our lives and to draw closer to Him with every good deed, with every event, with every experience in life, and to make us of those who are blessed with His Jannah in the Akhirah. Allahumma ameen. Brothers and sisters, one of the things that our deen calls us to reflect upon is the reality, or the essence, I should say, of disability. Being someone disabled in our reality has a specific meaning. It's usually used in a certain context, but our deen gives us different guidance on how to perceive real disability. What really disables a person? What makes someone labeled, categorized in our deen by Allah Azza wa Jal as someone disabled? If you ask people, what do you understand when the word disabled is used? Their minds will automatically venture to some physical impediment, some physical impairment or mental impairment, something that makes this person that is being referred to, quote unquote, different. But in actuality, our deen uses disability in a different sense. The Prophet ﷺ in the hadith that we often mention tells us to perceive that the essence of disability is a state of mind. And that's a state of mind that you seek refuge in Allah Azza wa Jal from. In the known dua that our Prophet would make. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-hammi wal-hazan wa a'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasal. The word for disability in Arabic is ajz. The Prophet ﷺ said, I seek refuge in you from grief and concern. And I seek refuge in you from ajz, disability and laziness. The essence of disability, as dealt with by our beloved Prophet ﷺ, is one that is in reference to a state of mind. It's not something that's related to age. No, perhaps someone in old age is more capable of acts of goodness than someone vibrant in their youth. Perhaps someone with certain physical disadvantages is actually far more superior in the eyes of Allah Azza wa Jal and in their deeds and in their influence than someone who has full control of their faculties. That's the Islamic paradigm on the subject of disability. When you think about it, think about how our Prophet ﷺ one time addressed the companions. He was with a group of companions. And he said to them, انطلقوا بنا إلى بصير بني واقف إلى البصير في بني واقف نعوده وكان رجلا أعمى. The Prophet ﷺ said to the companions with him, let's go to the basir. And basir, when used in Arabic, it's used to refer to someone who might not see with their physical eye, but they see with their spiritual eye. And the Quran refers to this dynamic. فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ. You want to know what true blindness looks like? It's not the blindness of the eye, it's the blindness of the soul. وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ انطلقوا بنا إلى البصير في بني واقف. Look at the prophetic expression. The one who truly has sight, but sight of a different kind, spiritual sight. نعوده وكان رجلا أعمى. He was one of the blind companions. When you think of disability, brothers and sisters, and you reflect on how the Prophet ﷺ made those with certain quote-unquote disadvantages front and center in carrying the message. They were carriers of the message. They weren't marginalized people. They weren't people who were disenfranchised. No, not at all. Some of the greatest companions had these quote-unquote disadvantages. The Islamic perspective on disability creates a paradigm shift in the mind. Realizing that, you know what? In actuality, we all have some sort of quote-unquote disadvantage. And that disadvantage comes in different forms. Perhaps someone who's fully capable and strong, but utterly disconnected from Allah, utterly disconnected from meaningful things in life, is far more disabled than that person, that powerhouse, like in the example of Abdullah ibn Maktoum or Amr ibn al-Jamuh, or individuals who have other physical disadvantages. That's the Islamic paradigm of it. If I'm someone who's capable of doing acts of goodness, but I never actually ever do it, then am I really better off than someone who Allah Azza wa Jal has created or given them certain obstacles in their reality, but they're able to persevere? That's disability versus disability versus being enabled. Being enabled is the Prophet ﷺ being told to address some of the poor companions, some of the individuals who, if it wasn't for their Islam, they'd be disenfranchised, like Salman al-Farisi or Ibn Mas'ud or the likes of Bilal. These individuals, the Prophet ﷺ was giving da'wah to the nobles. And then the deplorables, quote unquote, came along. These poor individuals who had no social status. And if it wasn't for their Islam, their life would not have the impact it had. They came and they sat with the Prophet ﷺ. And these quote unquote nobles, these people of means and influence, they said, اطرد هؤلاء لا يجترئون علينا. Tell these people to go, these deplorables. Who are they to sit with us? We're people of means, we're people of power. We're not going to sit in the presence of such individuals. But the Prophet ﷺ was told, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُم بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ. When you think about disability, what really cripples a person? Cripples a person. Oh, that's a word that has a very negative social stigma. It's used in a very incorrect way. What cripples a person? Sins cripple a person. Acts of aggression, that cripples a person. Zulm, that cripples a person. It makes them spiritually bankrupt. But in fact, that individual who's able to endure those obstacles in life is sharif عند Allah. Things aren't as they seem. The scales of Allah are different than the scales of people. And this gives us perspective on how to deal with those struggles in life we feel are disabling. One time, the Prophet ﷺ was joking with one of the individuals who had a physical deformity. He was very dear to the Prophet. And the Prophet ﷺ joked with him. This individual's name was Zahir. He's referenced in the hadith. And the Prophet ﷺ one time grabbed him. And he said, "Man yashtari al-abd?" Who will buy the slave? And of course he wasn't a slave. But he was joking. And he said, "Who will buy the slave?" So then he turned to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, "Idhan tajiduni kasidan." No one will, I'm worthless. I don't mean anything to anybody. So I won't get you much money, O Prophet of Allah. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Lakin عند الله لست بكاسد. لكن عند الله أنت غال." The Prophet ﷺ said, "You're not worthless by Allah. You're precious by Allah. You're valuable to Allah." What makes someone enabled? What makes someone disabled? That's something to reflect on. One of the tabi'een, he's from Sigar al-Tabi'een, he's very well known, his name is Al-Hasan al-Basri. He said, beautiful statement of his, listen to these words. لا تكرهوا البلايا الواقعة والنقمات الحادثة فلرب أمر تكرهه فيه نجاتك ولرب أمر تؤثره فيه عطبك. He says, don't despise what Allah allowed to manifest in your life. Don't allow it to disable you. Don't do that. Because perhaps something you despise, Allah Azza wa Jal has made to the path to your salvation. And perhaps something your heart desires will actually cause your ruin. Who's really disabled? Who's really enabled? Our deen teaches us that the way we treat the elderly, those who are financially in need and dependent, those who have physical disadvantages, those who have some mental struggles that they're dealing with, those are individuals who are actually the cause of barakah and blessings in life, the cause of the victory of the ummah, the cause of prosperity. Those are individuals who are very valuable in the eyes of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said in the words, إِنَّمَا تُنصَرُونَ وَتُرْزَقُونَ بِضُعَفَائِكُم. It's not something cliche. It's not something fake. No, this is real. This is how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with those around him. This is how we need to perceive things. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا تُنصَرُونَ وَتُرْزَقُونَ بِضُعَفَائِكُم. Your rizq, your nasr, your provisions, your victory, they come through the path of your du'afa, the way you treat them. Those who are most vulnerable. Our deen highlights the magnitude of those who are vulnerable by Allah Azza wa Jal. Who is really valuable and who's bankrupt? That's something to consider when you think about the reality of people. Because sometimes Allah Azza wa Jal takes away certain things from individuals and He replaces it with things that are far greater. And sometimes people are given all the means, yet they're unable to act and unable to capitalize on it. And that's true disability, brothers and sisters. Think about Ayyub alayhi salam. Ayyub alayhi salam, the great prophet, who was greatly afflicted in his health, in his body, and his well-being, to the point that people abandoned him. They didn't want to even come close to him. But you find Allah Azza wa Jal saying in the end of the story of Ayyub alayhi salam, وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ أَهْلَهُ وَمِثْلَهُمْ مَعَهُمْ رَحْمَةً مِّنْ عِنْدِنَا وَذِكْرَى لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ أَهْلَهُ. Look at the Quranic wording. We gave him his family as a gift. We gave him his family and the likes of them as a gift from Allah. Allah takes something from you. Don't let that disable you. If you think that Allah took something from you, because it's not really Allah taking something from you. For the mu'min, the dynamic is always ata. Allah is al-mu'ti. But that ata takes on different forms. That's the reality of it. The struggles of people, they're different. But ultimately, what defines someone who's truly, truly successful isn't the struggle. It is the ability to persevere through loss. You know, someone might look at the life of our Prophet ﷺ and say, well, this person, if it wasn't that he was the Prophet of Allah, his life shouldn't have meant much. Because look at his life. He was someone who should have been marginalized in Arabia. He didn't come from the most powerful tribe, no. His father was born, passed away at his birth. His mother passed away when he was 6. His grandfather, who was his caretaker after that, passed away when he was 8. His uncle passed away before accepting his Islam. All of his kids passed away during his lifetime, except Fatima. She survived him for 6 months. She passed away 6 months after the Prophet ﷺ. Someone, when you look at life like that, wow. Someone who's been through that has every reason to fail. But life shows us so many examples of individuals who have every reason to bring them down, yet they come up. And individuals who have every reason to go up, but they come down. It's not about what you have. It's about your ability to persevere. It's about your ability to deal with your reality and become better because of it. And that's a perspective on disability that changes the paradigm. Because people, you know what, this is a fitna for some people. Some people, they look at someone, well, you know, why does this person deserve to be born like this? Why is this person denied a quote-unquote normal life? What's normal? You find that those individuals are sometimes, the ones who have a lot of tests in life, are sometimes the most satisfied by life. You find that those individuals who have the weight of the world on their shoulders, people are surprised, how is this person living? How is this person finding any happiness in life? You find that those individuals feel fulfilled, feel comfortable in their heart. But that person who has every reason to be happy, has every reason to succeed, is in utter despair. That's the dynamics of dunya. And that's the reality by Allah Azza wa Jal. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us a people who are enabled to do goodness, who are enabled to strive for Jannah. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us of those who remove any inhibitors to success, any disabling, crippling things in life. And I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us of those who have a very positive and sound perspective on the realities of this dunya. Allahumma ameen. Ud'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijabah. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف الخلق وسيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. أما بعد, brothers and sisters, true disability, that's something that is first and foremost a spiritual state. True disability, that's something first and foremost emotional state. And if that wasn't the reality, then you would not find the likes of Amr ibn al-Jamuh being referred to as he was referred to by our beloved Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ asked a person from the tribe of Banu Salama, they were from the tribe of Amr ibn al-Jamuh. He said to them, Man sayyidukum? Man sayyidukum? Who is your sayyid and your leader? And they mentioned a name, and the Prophet ﷺ said, that's not your sayyid. That's not truly who your sayyid is. They said the sayyid of Banu Salama is Al-Jadd ibn Qais. And the Prophet ﷺ said at that point, وَأَيُّ دَاءٍ أَدْوَى مِنَ الْبُخْلِ. Al-Jadd ibn Qais was a person who was very stingy and miserly. So he said, this is not your Sayyid. The biggest and most fatal disease is miserliness. He said, your Sayyid, إنما سيدكم الجعد الأبيض عمرو بن الجموح. That's who your Sayyid is. Amr ibn al-Jamuh was a person who was elderly and he was physically impaired. He had a limp in his leg and he had other physical deformities. And he wanted to go out with the Prophet ﷺ in Uhud. And his children stopped him and they said, who are you? What are you doing? You're going to go out in battle with the Prophet ﷺ in Uhud. You can't do that. You're disabled. The Prophet ﷺ, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, my children are saying this. They say, I'm a'raj. Inni la arju an ata'a bi'arjati al-jannah. I hope to enter with my limp into Jannah. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke highly of Sayyidina Amr ibn al-Jamuh. That's someone who's not disabled. That's someone who's at the highest degree of ability that you could possibly imagine. That individual and others throughout life show us what really is significant. You know what? Health is going to go one day. Money is going to go one day. All of the person's means and influence are going to go one day. Power and position, that doesn't endure. What really endures is being a person of birr, being a person of benevolence, being a person of khuluq hasan, being a person who strives for excellence, who does his best. That's what really matters. All of the other things, those are distractions. And those will quickly dissipate and wane. They will mean nothing. Look at this story of one of the companions. Again, he was one of the quote-unquote deplorables. He was someone who should have been disenfranchised. And his name is Julaybib. Sayyidina Julaybib, the story of Julaybib is known. This individual, he was very, very poor. He didn't have a very powerful family behind him. And he was someone who wasn't given a lot of physical beauty. No, he had physical deformities. And the Prophet ﷺ approached the family to marry Sayyidina Julaybib. He said to the family, marry me your daughter. At first when they said this, they thought it was for the Prophet. So the family got very excited. The man, he said, is it for you, O Prophet of Allah? The Prophet ﷺ said, no, it's not for me. Who is it for? For Julaybib. He said, I'll go and consult her mother. So she came. So he came to the wife. And he said, the Prophet ﷺ is asking for our daughter. So the woman responded and she said, Na'am wa ni'matu ayni. This is the biggest blessing. To be married to someone like Rasulullah ﷺ, someone who has the status he has, that'd be a great honor. So then he said to her, no, it's not for the Prophet ﷺ. إِنَّهُ لَيْسَ يَخْطُبُهَا لِنَفْسِهِ إِنَّمَا يَخْطُبُهَا لِجُلَيْبِيبٍ. The mother got upset. She said, A Julaybib ibnah. Who's Julaybib to him? Is he his son? A Julaybib ibnah. La amrullahi la tuzawwijuhu. Don't do this. Don't accept. Refuse it. So then the daughter, she was wise. She was smart. She said, the Prophet's never going to make me in vain. Give me to what the Prophet ﷺ wishes. I want this. And when the Prophet ﷺ heard these words, he said, Allahumma subba alayha al-khayra sabban wa la taj'al aishaha kaddan kadda. He made dua for her. That type of person who has that perspective on life, who realizes what's a real disability, who realizes what's a real disability and what really actually matters. That's a person who's special in the eyes of Allah. He said, oh Allah, give her goodness in abundance and don't make her life difficult. And indeed Allah answered the prayers of our Prophet for this wife of Julaybib radiyallahu anhu, who later passed away in Uhud. But you see the status of Julaybib, the Prophet ﷺ himself speaking on his behalf. That's who the Prophet was. The Prophet didn't marginalize people based on their quote-unquote disadvantages. The Prophet ﷺ did not perceive those quote-unquote disadvantages as a reason for a person not to be successful. And the worst thing a person could do, a community could do, is to treat the vulnerable people in it with disregard. The worst thing a person could possibly do is look at their vulnerabilities and cause themselves to be disabled and not do anything with the things that Allah did give them. If Allah has taken away from you a thing, He's given you other things multifold. If Allah Azza wa Jal has tested a family, He has given it other things multifold. And that's Allah Azza wa Jal's ata and His taqseem His ata, the division and distribution of His arzaq between His creation. No one has everything, everyone has something. That's an attitude towards life. That's truly enabling. That's Allah Azza wa Jal. أن يحقق لنا السعادة في الدنيا وأن يجعلنا ممن يتقرب إليه بالسراء والضراء. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us of those who find reasons to draw closer to Him in hardship and in ease, and to make us of those who are enabled by what He has given them, the resources that He has put at their disposal, to draw closer to Him and to aspire for His Jannah. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen. Allahumma اغفر لنا وارحمنا وعافنا واعف عنا وتجاوز عن سيئاتنا. اللهم اغفر لصغيرنا وكبيرنا وحينا وميتنا وذكرنا وأنثانا وشاهدنا وغائبنا. اللهم من أحييته منا فأحيه على الإيمان ومن أمته منا فأمته على الإسلام. اللهم اجعل خير عمرنا آخرة وخير عملنا خواتمة وخير أيامنا يوم أن نلقاك فيه وأنت راض عنا. آمين آمين. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
La ilaha illallah. Istaqimu yarhamni yarhamukumullah. Inshallah, after Salah, we have for a few moments the American Muslim Law Officers Association to address us as a community with a few words. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallahu feekum. Allahu Akbar. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والتين والزيتون وطور سينين وهذا البلد الأمين. لقد خلقنا الإنسان في أحسن تقويم ثم رددناه أسفل سافلين إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون. فما يكذبك بعد بالدين. أليس الله بأحكم الحاكمين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Before I pass the microphone over to listen to our officers, we just make a dua for one of the brothers who passed away in the community from COVID. His name is Hisham Bilto. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to have mercy on him and to forgive him. Allahumma ighfir lahu warhamhu wa'afihi wa'afu anhu wa tajawaz an sayyi'atih. Allahumma akrim nuzulahu wa wasi' mudkhalahu wa jafi al-arda an janbayh. Allahumma in kana muhsinan fazid fi ihsanih wa in kana musian fatajawaz an sayyi'atih. Allahumma اغسله بالماء والثلج والبرد ونقه من الذنوب والخطايا والآثام كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس. اللهم اجعل مأواه الجنة ولا تجعل مأواه النار. اللهم اجعل مأواه الجنة ولا تجعل مأواه النار. اللهم ابدله دارا خيرا من داره وأهلا خيرا من أهله وجيرانا خيرا من جيرانه وارزق أهله الصبر والسلوان واجمعهم به في جناتك جنات النعيم يا أرحم الراحمين آمين آمين. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. And also the purpose of the khutbah was that the masjid is partnering with Muhsin, and we're going to have a lecture about special needs and the disability in Islam tomorrow at 6 p.m. Please listen in. And we have Brother Dean Mekkawi and our Muslim police officers. Please give them your undivided attention and listen to them for a few minutes. Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. Qabr Allah. Little introduction. My name is Mustafa Rabah. I am the Chief of Police in Bergenfield, New Jersey. My colleagues, I'll have them introduce themselves in a few minutes. Just to give you a little bit about who we are, we're the American Muslim Law Enforcement Association of New Jersey. We're comprised of officers, Muslim police officers throughout the state. To give you a little background about what we've done so far, about 5 years ago, there was an incident in Flint, Michigan, where a police officer was stabbed in the neck by a Muslim individual. Myself and the officers, we went to Flint, Michigan. We went to show support for the officer that was stabbed in the neck and to get rid of that stigma and to say that the person who committed this offense or this crime isn't a representative of who we are. He's not indicative of the religion. This is who we are and this is what we're about. So that was part of, to distance ourselves from that type of behavior, and at the same token to show our support for the police officer. Fast forward that incident, about 2 years after the fact, we went to Colorado. There was a Muslim police officer who was shot in the head. Luckily, he survived. Again, our organization went there and we went to show our support to this brother. And again, part of what we're trying to do is to break the stigma of Muslims and what you see on TV, what you hear on the radio. And the way to do it is to have our voices at the table. I want to encourage the youth, and I see some of the youth here, to please get involved in police work. That's the best way to really break the stigma. I know growing up, when I first became a police officer, there was so much misconception. And when I would explain to them, no, this is what we're about, this is what we do, and it was like a light bulb that went on in their head, and they would say, oh wow, we never knew that. And I've heard the saying, if you don't have a voice at the table, or if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu. It couldn't be truer. Not only do we need to have a seat at the table, we need to make our voices heard. What we're trying to do in addition to that is to have classes. Myself and other officers, we currently teach at the Passaic County Police Academy and Bergen County Police Academy. Our teaching is to basically, it's for officers and recruits that want to become officers, to tell them the basics of who we are, what we believe in, and things of that nature, so there's a better understanding. Ultimately, we'd like to bridge the gap between the PDs and the Muslim community. I want you guys to know that we're here for you. Our doors are always open. If there's anything that you need, any issues that you need assistance with, we're all here. Thank you for your time. I see my boys just came in, and inshallah they'll pray the next salat with me because I'll be here as well. And I'm just going to pass the mic over to my colleague. And again, thank you for your time.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Bashar Belkar. I'm a detective sergeant here in Clifton in the juvenile division. I've been here for 25 years. Right now, the hot topic with the state is police reform and racial justice. So I've seen a lot of racism. I'm sure you've experienced racism. We have a seat at the table. We want to hear from you guys as far as what do you want to see as far as police reform. Reach out to us, give us some ideas, so we give the ideas back to the state. Like Mustafa said, we're here for the community. Anything you guys need, please reach out to us. Inshallah, in the future, we'll have open debates here and forums so we can speak, and we can learn, and we can bring back good ideas from our community to the state so we can have real police reform. Jazakallah.
Bismillah, assalamu alaikum. My name is Walid Abdulaziz. I'm with the Weehawken Police Department for 20 years now. I just want to touch on and kind of conclude what the other two officers said. With our youth, we not only encourage you to become police officers, but obviously go into positions of authority, positions of leadership, positions where you can make a change and influence the other people who are growing up, the younger generation before you. Obviously, if you're here today, obviously you're interested in change because we're all here to change ourselves first and foremost, inshallah, to better ourselves. So obviously you want to better those around you, better those in your communities. So together we could help make that change. Inshallah, we're going to be passing out some pamphlets. If you haven't had one, actually postcards. And I'm going to pass it on to Dean McCowie.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khair. I just want to tell you that we will be here for the third salah. If you have any question, we'll be, inshallah, happy to answer you. Jazakumullah khair.
What's the next step for people to actually engage? What's the platform?
As far as what?
You propose that they should be engaging and it should be what should right now we have an email address. Email us and we'll have stuff here also.
Well, we can assist whoever's having issues, but obviously it's the initiative of that person, meaning that if they want to become a police officer, obviously they have to take a test, go through the proper channels.
The email address is on the next step for them to connect to you or to that. What's the next step? Because that's the thing, that's the link that's missing. What should they do now? Like somebody's interested now.
They have to go through the Department of Personnel and apply there first.
Yeah. No, I'm saying like for the youth that's here. The youth? Yeah, so they want to, like, so they want to get involved. What should they do now? And this, you propose something great, but how to connect it? Just like information. Well, we're going to be around. We have an email address to contact us through emails. Tell them to email you also. So that's the next step. So then the applicable, inshallah.